Good afternoon. I'm Senator Kimberly Lightford, Chairman of the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus. We're here today to share with you our sentiments on the governor's state-to-state address. During this short period of time, as the governor alluded, there were a lot of successes and wins that we truly believe that will help the communities that we represent. That started with Rebuild Illinois, a capital infrastructure bill that we had not seen in a very long time to help our roads and bridges and to create jobs that is terribly needed in our communities. From there, minimum wage to early childhood, restoring the funds to adding additional dollars in early childhood education, clearly up through vocational learning. We spent years not having a budget, and this was the first year that we were able to pass a bipartisan balanced budget. We even took a stab at pension reform, addressing our police and fire and making sure that they had a healthy retirement as well. There's a lot of more work to do as we move to stabilize the state and particularly the African American community. I was pleased to hear the governor speak about diversity, acknowledging the inequities that have taken shape in our communities that we represent for decades and generational decades of just not being fair, nothing being equitable. So we appreciate the governor for acknowledging that. That's something he's very interested in, making sure that that tide turns. We're here today to talk to you about moving forward on items such as ethics, more and more diversity and policies that have impacted our communities, and of course, property tax relief. So I'd like to open up with education, because one of the most important critical junctures is educating our communities. If we're not educating our children as early as preschool and not preparing them for kindergarten, we're not preparing them for life. And we pride ourselves in fighting to ensure that there's equitable funding in education and that there's adequate after-school supports for those children who find themselves needing that supplemental service. Starting with Representative Carol Ammons to talk to you about college affordability and the importance to ensure that minorities, particularly African Americans, are able to attain a higher education.
Thank you, Leader Lightford. This afternoon, we are so honored that the governor really put an emphasis on higher education. In particular, we know in the United States, we have trillions of dollars, over $1.5 trillion of student loan debt that families cannot afford to pay. We also know this crisis has reached Illinois, where we have a downward spiral of high school graduates going on to continue at community colleges as well as four-year institutions. We've seen states across this nation begin to deal with the promise of education regarding tuition-free access. Tennessee promise. We've seen it in New York. We've seen it in Oregon, and we've seen it in Rhode Island. And I was honored to hear that the governor announced working with the University of Illinois system to reduce tuition burden on families in Illinois. We have taken a stab at it, but I don't believe we've gotten exactly where we want to go. We want to see more students have access to community college, which is why we are focused on free tuition for our community colleges in the state of Illinois. We believe that people in our communities who are really struggling and their families are struggling with income disparities have access to community college on the level that we've not seen and is unprecedented in Illinois. Governor Pritzker made that announcement about a week ago, that he's committed not only to the Illinois commitment that was adopted by the University of Illinois, but also that we are putting effort toward expanding access to community colleges as well as our four-year institutions. If states like Tennessee can do it, a state like Illinois can as well. We believe black people in Illinois can only get ahead if they have access to affordable college trade schools, and other programs that would increase their skill set. And we do believe that Illinois is on the right track towards this goal. I also want to ask my colleague in the House, Representative Evans, to join me on the issue of workforce development. In Illinois, we have an Illinois economy that is a serious shortage of workers, people that make a living wage, and we need to do more to address this issue in the Black community. The skill gap in the United States, and specifically in Illinois, has 40% of our community members, many African American men, without decent wages as well as decent jobs. And so help me welcome to the podium Representative Evans.
Thank you. Thank you, Carol, and thank you to the Black Caucus. Education is critical, but after education, it's a job. And many of the social ills in our communities can be solved with a job. It was wonderful to see that the governor mentioned the reduction in the unemployment rate in the state of Illinois. But as Black people and as folks that represent Black communities, we cannot brush over the fact that many Black communities still suffer with double-digit unemployment. So is the hope that the governor and his team will continue to reduce overall unemployment, but to focus on the silo of African Americans so we can continue to get the unemployment rate to a manageable place for the Black community. It was wonderful to see that the bill for capital that we all voted for, the majority of us voted for, has money for great programs, apprenticeship programs. We want to see a continued investment in the budget address in workforce development programs, because a job is a solution to many issues in our community. So thank you, Representative Adams, for the focus on the programs needed in our community colleges to give folks the skill. And we also encourage the private sector to continue to work with the governor to reduce unemployment throughout the state of Illinois, but specifically in the Black community. Jobs are the key, and we have a path to get there. And I'm happy to see and to hear in the message that Governor Pritzker wants to really focus on that issue. So thank you. Back up Leader Lightford. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Evans. We also know that we're at a time where we need to restore our public trust in elected officials. We have a bipartisan, bicameral ethics commission that will be submitting findings within the next couple months. And our goal as the Black Caucus to participate fully in that process. One of our leaders is on the commission, that is Senator Sims, and I'd like to invite him to share with you his comments around ethics, and he'll be joined by Representative West.
Thank you, Leader Lightford, for pointing out and allowing me to speak to ethics reforms in the state of Illinois. As Leader Lightford mentioned, we have a bicameral, bipartisan commission that addresses ethics reform across the state. We are meeting, in fact, tomorrow to talk about the issue of restoring public trust, because that is paramount to what we do. In order for us to be the stewards of the work that the individuals send us here to do, they have to trust that we are engaging in that work on their behalf, not on any individual's behalf. And let me say this. No, there are very few members of the General Assembly who will engage in activities. They've been held accountable by very few members, have been challenged with issues and things that have been done inappropriately, but the vast majority come to Springfield to do the work of the people, to do the work on behalf of the people, empowered by the people, not empowered on their own. Now, we have had some individuals who have behaved badly, behaved poorly. Their actions and activities are repugnant, and they are being addressed. But first and foremost, we are here to address the people's business. We want to make sure that they know what we do is above reproach. What we do is for them in all ways, in all walks, and at all times. So if anyone engages in behavior, they should be held accountable. The commission, if they are doing things that are inappropriate, they should be held accountable. The commission works on those issues every day. I've dedicated a large amount of my time to researching best practices, researching where we're going to go. Because in order for the public to know that we are doing what's in their best interest, we have to show them every day. And we do that. So as I'm looking forward to, and I appreciate the governor mentioning in his State of the State address, that we will get our bipartisan, bicameral report to not only the General Assembly, but to the governor by March 31. And from that, I expect changes that will make sure that we are doing what is important on behalf of the people of the state of Illinois. We will make sure that individuals understand that we are working on their behalf at all times, not on our own self-interest. That is not why we come to Springfield. And the members of the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus work tirelessly to ensure that our constituents know that we are doing what is best for them at all times. We want to work on behalf of our constituents. We want to work on behalf of the entire state of Illinois at all times to ensure that the actions we take are above reproach. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak to this issue. It is one of the critical issues that we will deal with during this session. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk about that. And I want to invite my colleague, Representative West, to the podium at this time.
Good afternoon. My name is Representative Maurice West. I'm from Rockford, Illinois, and I just completed my first year in 2019 as a state representative for the Rockford area. Thank you, Leader Lightfoot, for this opportunity. To my Illinois Black Caucus family. January 9th, I was sworn in as a state representative, and that afternoon, I was called a corrupt politician. And though I could get mad about that, I couldn't, because of the history of how things have been operating in our state. And so when it comes to ethics, it is imperative, and I can speak for my Black Caucus family, that's imperative that we regain the trust of the Illinois residents again. We cannot move onward, we can't move upward without their trust. We have forward-thinking ideas and things that will bring forth inclusion and transformative ideas for our state, but we can't do it if the Illinois people do not trust us. And so I'm looking forward, and I'm thankful for what the governor said about ethics. He mentioned even that it comes even down to our conduct while we're here in Springfield. Every single one of us up here, our mission, our core mission, is to work for the people that we represent. That's where we get our drive, that's where we get our fulfillment, because we're working for the people in our districts. We're working for the people in our state. And so we'll be working with the governor, we'll be working with Democratic legislation, we'll be working with even Republican legislation that deals with ethics reform. The governor mentioned how he's going to put a stop to being a elected official and going straight to being a lobbyist. That's something that we're going to definitely work with the governor on, and I'm looking forward to what the commission has to offer. And I just want the Illinois residents to know that we will be working to regain your trust. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you, Representative West. We do not want to lose sight of the importance of an accurate census count. It's very important for hard-to-count communities. Many of us represent some of those who are not being counted, were not counted 10 years ago, and it caused a lot of reductions in resources to our community over the last 10 years. The Black Caucus took a strong stance and received funding for census, and I'd like for Representative Welch to come up and update us on census reform, and Representative Tapati.
Good afternoon. Happy New Year to you all. As Leader Lightfoot said, it is essentially important that we all get counted. That process is going to begin in a very, very short time period. And all of my colleagues behind us, we've been working on this for well over a year, preparing for mid-March of 2020. in which the United States Census Bureau will be sending out forms to all Illinoisans, and we're encouraging all Illinoisans, especially those in hard-to-count communities, the hard-to-count communities that we all represent, to send those forms in right away. We want to encourage them to do that so it doesn't get to the point in which people are concerned about knocks at the door. There will be no knocking at the door if you take the initiative and you send in that form as soon as you receive it. We know as a caucus, and we've dug in on this, as I said, for over a year, that every person that gets counted in Illinois translates into roughly about $1,500 to $1,600. The previous administration, because of some of the actions that it took and actions that it did not take, Illinois has lost over $7 billion per year in federal funding. So we want to ensure that those programs that are so important to the viability of our communities remain and stay intact. So I want to thank all of my colleagues that are standing to the left of me, to the right of me, and behind me for supporting this initiative that we've all been pushing in our respective communities. And I want to call up my colleague who I've been working with for many years. We were law school classmates, Representative Welch, to give some insight on that as well.
Thank you, Leader Petty, Leader Lightfoot, and my colleagues in the Illinois Black Caucus. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with all of you today. Again, my name is Chris Welch. I am state representative in the 7th District, half of Senator Lightfoot's senatorial district. I'll tell you, this issue is probably one of the most important issues that we can be talking about here today. And it's actually one of the things that I would say the governor missed on today. He delivered an amazing speech. He talked about all of the great accomplishments that we were able to do together in a bipartisan way last year. And I looked at my colleagues and said, wow, can't believe we got all that done in just a year. And looking forward to working to get a number of things done this year. But the most important thing that we need to be focused on right now is the census. We have to be counted. This is important for two reasons. Resources and representation. If we don't get counted, we can't complain when we lose resources and representation. And so it's important that we get out there and make sure every single person in this state gets counted, particularly in our community. Whether they're a new infant or elderly, we got to make sure everyone is counted. And one of the things that you all can help us do, the U.S. Census Bureau continues to look for people to go out and knock on doors and work in these well-paid jobs. Please ask them to visit the U.S. Census Bureau's website, sign up for these jobs, and get out there. These jobs will go well into September, and they pay very well. We also want to urge the governor's office to look at black media. There's been contracts awarded and will be awarded. There's still $9 million out there in this budget. We want to make sure that the black media that knows our community, that knows how to reach us, is part of this process. It's critical because it's about resources and representation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good job. Thank you, Representative Welch, and to Patty. You know, we spoke briefly about the fact that we finally had a balanced budget, a budget that actually fund programs that are critical to the black community around mental health, a lot of social services programs that support our young people with child care. Those were a lot of wins that we finally received. So we're proud to have our budgeteers who represent from the Black Caucus interests. We fought for youth employment and after-school programs and violence prevention dollars, which were all funded. I'd like for Representative Will Davis to come share with you some of the efforts that the Black Caucus attained in the balanced budget.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Will Davis. I represent the 30th District, which is in the South Suburbs. Happy to be here. Very proud to stand with my Black Caucus colleagues in response to the governor's address. we all know property taxes are important. Or excuse me, a balanced budget are important. It's another topic. So last year we passed a balanced budget for the first time in several years. While that puts us on the right track, the work is still yet to be done. The budget impasse of previous years decimated, destroyed, whatever adjective you want to use, our human social services infrastructure, as well as our jobs infrastructure. We could not provide for our most vulnerable citizens under previous administrations. Our first balanced budget is only the first step. We applaud our governor's work to have a balanced budget for the first time in several years, but we know that this is merely the beginning. We must continue this trend, and the governor must continue and must desire to work with the Black Caucus to make this happen. The Illinois Legislative Black Caucus recognizes that without a balanced budget, low-income and working families will still struggle to survive. The revenue we desire to support these families must be realized by reducing our inmate population and creating savings in our Department of Corrections as well as other agencies, as well as restructuring our pension debt, something that we know we need to focus on this year, and by creating a more fair tax system in the state of Illinois, creating a tax system that puts the burden of paying taxes on the individuals that can most afford to pay their taxes while relieving the burden for those who unfortunately cannot do it. We know that having a balanced budget is key. It is the basis of one of the basic reasons why we are legislators and why we are here when we think about our functions. So we know that the work is going to be tough. While we did have some success on having a balanced budget this past year, but again, this is just the beginning. The needs are greater, the work is greater, and we as the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus are ready to engage with our governor and his administration to make these things happen, particularly for the communities that we represent. And we want to make sure that our communities are taken care of. We believe that when we help the least of them, everyone else is taken care of appropriately. So again, thank you very much for allowing me to be here and allowing me to stand with my Legislative Black Caucus colleagues.
You took my notes. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I'll freestyle. Okay. Thank you, Representative Davis. We appreciate your comments. So for the first time, we had a capital bill in a very long time. So many of our schools are crumbling. So many of our bridges are unsafe for our constituents to travel. Not enough jobs for our people to work on. So we're really happy that we finally have Rebuild Illinois, and I'd like to have Representative Ford and Representative Williams to share with you a little bit of our efforts around capital and infrastructure needs.
Thank you, Leader Lightford. And I have to say that as state representative, there's no better caucus to be a part of than the Black Caucus. The Black Caucus, I have to tell you, we heard the governor talk about Senator President Cullerton fighting and being devoted with a vision for health care, education, and civil rights. But this caucus here is the caucus that stands up every day. We come to Springfield to fight for those things, and I do believe that without the Black Caucus, the state would be worse off for poor people. So I want to thank my caucus members for standing strong and always standing up for black people. And when black people do well, the entire state does better. And so I want to thank the press for being here and listening to the Black Agenda, listening to what's important to black people in this state of Illinois. And I also want to say that words matter. And the governor talked about corruption. But the greatest corruption in the state of Illinois is the communities where black people live. They're deteriorating, schools are falling apart, roads are crumbling, bridges are crumbling, and homeowners are struggling. And so words matter. So I'll take some clips from the governor's words. Bit by bit, inch by inch, I am working hard to reverse the harms that has been done to the people and communities that have been left behind over many generations by government policies and elected officials who were content to simply ignore them. There are no other communities in the state of Illinois that have been ignored like the black communities. And so we're grateful that we voted for almost a $50 billion capital bill to rebuild Illinois. And so what does that mean? That means that this caucus will stand strong to work with the governor's administration and urge our constituents to urge the governor to rebuild the black communities. So the next person that will speak will be my good friend, Representative Williams, that represents parts of the West Side where development is needed. Representative Williams.
Good job, Ford. Wow. Thank you, Black Caucus. Thank you, Leader, for allowing me to speak. My name is Jawahario Omar Williams. I'm the current state representative of the 10th District, which is the Greater West Side. Now, what Representative Ford said is exactly right. The black community has been denied opportunities for years to come. But we worked hand by hand with the governor to encourage him to build a black community up. How do we start building the black community up? Holding construction jobs accountable, allowing black people to get into these apprenticeship programs. The governor spoke of, I'm gonna read it right here exactly. The governor spoke over a major infrastructure plan that invests in rebuilding our roads and bridges while creating 500,000 new jobs. That's a lot of new employment. It would be great if we can get 50,000 or more of those jobs going to black people, people of the 10th District, people who need the economic opportunities, people who have been denied justice or opportunity simply because they're black. Putting us in the apprenticeship programs of every major trade, holding the contractors and these builders accountable for hiring black people, holding the subcontractors accountable for hiring black people and people from the west side of Chicago who greatly need these opportunities to be able to get employment opportunities where they great paying union wage jobs. And not only when the job ends, allow them to position themselves to put in another piece of employment. The opportunities are there, the jobs are there, they're just not hiring black people. They prefer to hire people as far away as from Texas who come up in here, get great jobs, do the employment opportunities, and going back home with their money. But they don't want to hire people of color from the city who are struggling to pay these parking tickets, plate stickers, city stickers, who creating revenue for the state that's going back into the state. They don't want to hire us. They hire people way as far as Denver. Iron workers from Denver coming to Chicago to work is ridiculous. We got a mass amount of young black men and young black women who are able to do the work and they're willing and able to be trained, just not getting an opportunity. So we're going to work with the Black Caucus, going to hold the governor accountable for these $500,000 jobs that he spoke of, that a lot of that employment need to go to black people, women, and people of color. So thank you, Black Caucus. Let's continue to hold the fight. Let's hold the governor's feet to the fire. And thank you, Leader Lightfoot.
Thank you, Representative Williams. So if we have the capital that we need, if we're counting our people like we should, we restore public trust, we're educating our people, but we do not have quality health care. If we do not have access to quality health care, without good health, all the rest of these initiatives are in vain. I'd like to invite Representative Lilly to the podium.
Come on, Leader Lilly, bring it, girl.
Thank you, Leader Lightfoot. And as the chair of the House Black Caucus, I stand with all of the Black Caucus to share the importance of your health. If you don't have your health, you don't have nothing else. And here in Illinois, we are 47th out of 50 states in health outcomes. We have a sick society where we are talking about closing safety net hospital in the most vulnerable communities, where we will further decimate the health and wellness of the citizens of Illinois. I sit on the Transformation Hospital Review Committee, and I also sit on the Medicaid Wellness Committee, a task force. When we talk about how we're going to deliver health care here in the state of Illinois, we leave out the discussion on how we're going to deal with the wellness of the citizens of Illinois. We talk continuously about bottom line ethics. If we don't have a bottom line, we can't provide the services. So what's happening in our communities, healthcare facilities are making decisions to cut out viable services that our citizens need. And we know they need them because we're 47th in the state, in the country, of not having well outcomes. We must collectively join our governor who stated, and I will finish his quote from earlier. I remind myself every day that I have obligations not just to the current people of Illinois, but to the many people who precede us, who were discriminated against, harmed, treated as lesser, and forgotten. Lastly, damaged their echo through too many communities today. We are obligated to make our future more equitable and fair. And we can do that collectively when we have access to health care for every citizen here in the state of Illinois. Every person who is eligible for Medicaid should have access to the health care that they need to make them well. Every worker who works in a health care facility should have benefits, health care benefits that make them health and well to provide services to those who enter those facilities. The most vulnerable populations in our state are poor, our children, our seniors, our veterans. As Governor Pritzker mentioned, these are all real people. When we have a mindset within our state and in our country that bottom line is more important than access to health care to make folks well and viable citizens in our country, something is wrong. The transformation is not the maintaining of the sustainability. The transformation is a mindset of the leaders and administrators who are delivering health care in this country where health and wellness is the priority. The health outcomes for our citizens is the priority. And here, the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus, who represents the most under-resourced community in our entire state, needs to maintain our safety nets, our critical care, access to all services that are needed, behavioral health, mental health, medical health. Our emergency rooms are threatening to be closed. If you don't have your health, you don't have much health. And I'm very pleased to hear Governor Pritzker indicate that he wants to serve and make sure that all of the citizens in Illinois have access, particularly those who have been harmed over decades because of divestment and lack of concern. Thank you, Leader Lightfoot, for having this opportunity, and thank each and every one of the legislators here in the Black Caucus for standing for the people you represent. God bless you.
Great. There's also needs to be addressed in our criminal justice reform system. The governor mentioned his efforts around criminal justice reform, and we have Senator Patricia Van Pelt to speak to that, and also the unemployment of our people.
Thank you. I am Patricia Van Pelt. I am the state senator for the 5th District. My district is on the west side of Chicago. I ran for office about 8 years ago, and I ran against a sitting incumbent, and I did not run against her because she was a bad senator. I ran against her because I wanted to bring the voice of ordinary people into government. So standing here today, I want to share what ordinary people would say as a response to the governor's speech. I think people will be excited about the changes that's happened and how things are moving forward on multiple fronts. But because we don't have a lot of time here, I want to zero down to what ordinary people would be, the questions the ordinary people would be wanting to ask the governor today. And that is, number one, if unemployment is at the lowest record in the history of this state, why is it that African American males aged 20 to 24 are unemployed at a 45% rate? 45% of African American males aged 20 to 24 are unemployed in Illinois. So why is that? And also they would ask, why is it that we're spending $1.5 billion in the Department of Corrections to correct people who are done wrong, but yet when they come home, they haven't been corrected? Why is it that we're having 45 to 50% of our ex-offenders that come back? Why is it that they can't get into jobs, can't get in opportunities? Is that a plan? Is that the kind of plan that we want to promote? Because if it's not a plan, I want the governor to know from ordinary people, that's what we're living with every day. So crime runs rampant, yes, and we march, we carry our signs, we pray, we do all the things we're supposed to do, but we need support on a higher level. And I like what the governor is doing because he's measuring his success. And you know what? What gets measured is what gets done. But from ordinary people, we would say to you today, Mr. Governor, start measuring us. Because when you measure us, you're going to see where all the problems that are in this state are stemming from. They're stemming from injustice, unfairness, discrimination, and just outright arrogance against the people. So I want to say to the governor, the first place that we can start to improve conditions in our community from a person from the community is to start with the institutional racism that we see running rampant through the Department of Corrections, Department of Human Services, all these different departments and agencies, Department of Natural Resources is running rampant. And if he starts measuring that, we'll see some significant change.
All right. Thank you, Leader Lightfoot. Brothers and sisters of the Black Caucus, good afternoon. Representative Slaughter, representing the far south side of Chicago, southwest Cook County suburbs, House Chair, Judiciary Criminal Committee. Listen, it's real simple. And make no mistake about it, we will not stop, we will not quit fighting for criminal justice reform. We know this system has had a disproportionate impact on our people. We've ran the numbers. The prison industrial complex has devastated our communities. 40,000 individuals in the Department of Corrections, 24,000 people on parole. It gets worse. 6,500 individuals with 30-year plus sentences. 4,500 people with 50-year plus sentences. Ladies and gentlemen, almost 200,000 children in our state have parents that are incarcerated in our system. So yes, we're going to continue to fight for programs, resources, services, and initiatives that keep our brothers and sisters out of jail, out of prison. And yes, those that are in our system, we will continue to advocate for evidence-based practices. And for those citizens returning home, yes, we will continue to push for innovative reentry programming. It's important to note, and even for my colleagues, everything is on the table. Ending cash bail, ending the practice of locking up our people pre-incarceration before they've had a trial, addressing overly punitive sentencing policies like felony retail theft that disproportionately impacts our people. Also looking at things like truth in sentencing. You guys may have heard about that. And I declare today, we're here, we're going to do everything in our power to address our racist truth in sentencing policies that have locked up our people for way too long. We're also going to take a fresh look at our failed parole system. We're also going to take a look at how we're treating what we consider criminal justice issues. Substance abuse and public health issues are just that. They're public health issues, not criminal justice issues. So we feel okay. I think we all would have liked the governor to expound on criminal justice reform, but we're glad that both the lieutenant governor and the governor are prioritizing this. This is very, very personal to each and every one of us. It's a very, very sensitive topic. It directly impacts us and our communities each and every day. And so we're here for our people, for the Black community. Also, just a big shout out to all of the Black Caucus members throughout history that has carried the torch and fought for freedom and justice. And so we're here to fight. We're marching forward. We're ready for this, and we will rise. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Slaughter. Our final speaker will speak to a concern that we have for renewable energy. As you can see, the Black Caucus has a number of issues that we care about, that we're fighting for, and that we have been fighting for many years. And we're following through on implementation and working with the governor, his administration, to hold them accountable to the Black community. Representative Sonia Harper.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Representative Sonia Harper from the 6th District. My district is all in Chicago, the best parts from City Hall and the Thompson Center, all the way to my home in Inglewood. So the governor spoke today about the pressure to adopt new clean energy legislation to reduce the carbon pollution. And we agree with him, right? Only if we can feel those environmental benefits and those monetary benefits in the form of jobs and workforce skills and training in our communities. Climate change has had a disproportionate impact on the health and economic security of African American families who are far more likely to breathe polluted air and live next to sources of pollution like coal plants. So Black people seem to inhabit some of the most environmentally unfriendly places in this state. We're dealing with crazy levels of lead pollution, yet don't we have a right to clean water? Don't we have a right to clean air and clean soil just as everyone else does? And don't we have a right to pay fair prices for our utility bills, right? So when we create opportunities for and work on legislation that moves us closer to cleaner environments and cleaner energy, we are moving in the right direction for our communities. We also agree with the governor that clean energy legislation should not be written solely by utility companies. So today, a revolution in clean energy gives us a chance to correct the injustice and level the playing field for our communities. So we look forward to working with the governor to get this right and making sure that Black communities, Black workers, Black families are a major part of the new green economy here in the state of Illinois. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Harper. That brings our press conference to a close. We'd like to just let the governor's office know and the governor himself that the state of the state is doing well compared to previous years. This is the first time that we can come before you with some accomplishments that we have fought for and that our community is beginning to feel. But we have a long way to go, and we're hoping that they're committed to ensuring that we move forward as a people with the entire state. I'd like to offer up any questions if there are questions of us at this time. Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a blessed day.